Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the July 3 celebration in Corolla Light. And we are so glad that you're here, but we're even more glad that we have the chairman of Currituck's Board of Commissioners, who has a long history in Corolla Light. In fact, he was just telling us as a 16-year-old, he remembers bringing a U-Haul trailer in to his dad's house in 1986 and being part of the early pioneers in Corolla Light. And I think on behalf of the Corolla Light community, we just want to thank our chairman of the Board of Commissioners for understanding so much the unique needs of Corolla and Corolla Light. You've done a wonderful job. You've put up with an awful lot. 8 years of serving as a local official is certainly something that is not easy to undertake. But you were a pioneer just in terms of understanding that people looked for more than a beach. They were looking for introduction to our horses and introduction to other kinds of things going up where the road ends and being up there. And you've remembered that. And I think we may hear some things that will surprise some of you about the unique aspects of being an elected official in North Carolina. I know some of us who grew up in other states are still sort of amazed at how we can be the lowest county as far as the state is concerned in allocating funding for any kind of grant programs. It's really kind of interesting. That's because we're economically successful out here on the Outer Banks, and we'll hear more about that. But there are lots of complexities of dealing with local government in a county that's as diverse as this. We look forward to hearing Bob tell us about that. The other thing I want to say is this officially kicks off our run-up to the 40th anniversary of Corolla Light. We'll be celebrating that officially starting with Owners Weekend in October. On many of the chairs here is a coin, and this is just to give you an idea of something that's coming to Corolla Light in the year 2025. We're calling it the Magic Coin. And with this Magic Coin and an owner's band, you'll get some fun things. Diane, for example, when you go over to the grass court, of course, will sell you one round of golf and give you a free round to go with it. And when you go to places like restaurants, the Corolla Pizza or Wild Horse Cafe, they'll have special deals with you. Alcohol restrictions in North Carolina are so complex that even the restaurants don't really sort of understand it, but you notice we don't have happy hours here in North Carolina, but we have other ways. You'll get other deals like $5 for appetizers. So the thing to remember is that you're going to have a chance to buy up to 4 per household of these, and we estimate that it comes with a value of well over $200 in terms of what it will get you in terms of discounts for the early price of $40 per coin. Through the end of Owners Weekend, and the money will go to pay for our 40th anniversary celebrations and in future years to thank some of the wonderful nonprofit charitable organizations that exist that do so much to make us so happy here. The format for this is we're not talking about Corolla Light issues here. We're here to talk about Corolla Light as a part of Currituck County, part of North Carolina. We're so delighted to have Bob with us to just help us, give us some advice as to how we can keep the dream alive here in Corolla Light and open the doors to some progress. And Sam Walker is just such a wonderful person. He agreed to be the moderator here. For those of you who don't get Sam's aggregation of all the news that he reminds me of what the New York Times says, all the news that's fit to print. Well, he doesn't even worry about printing it. He just sends it electronically. But every day, my mailbox has 3, 4, 5 important information tidbits that Sam hunts out and shares with us. If you're not getting Sam's e-news, you really need to. But Sam, thanks for being the moderator. Mm-hmm. And with that, again, the format is freeform. People are willing to ask questions, ask for advice, make comments, and so the forum is now open. Mm-hmm. Sam, anything you want to say before?
Well, I'll introduce myself. I'm a 7th generation of Currituck. Grew up on the mainland. I now have 8th with my children and 9th generation Currituckers with grandchildren. So my mother was actually county commissioner's chairman from 1984. Well, I was a county commissioner from 84 to 92. Served as chair at one time. She's one of those that you can either thank or blame for working with Earl Slick to take the gate down.
Yeah.
She was one of those who was at the forefront of that. She got beat in 1992 because she saw the vision of buying the Wellhead Club. So,
A lot of people did.
yeah, a lot of people did. She's one of those who it cost her an election, but it's one of the proudest things our family has as a legacy of Currituck is that we own the Wellhead Club. So I have a special relationship with Corolla in more ways. One, my wife and I were married at the White House in 1995. I wake up every morning 5 miles to your west and see the White House. See you. I see you I see all your lights here from my house at Church's Island. So thank you for being who you are, which is you've made Currituck your home in one way or another, because those of us who grew up on the mainland who didn't have a lot, I mean, that's how it was. Corolla made Currituck what it is today, the entire county. So thank you. Because I was educated in Currituck schools, my kids are educated in Currituck County schools, my grandkids will be educated in Currituck County schools because of people like you who've made our county so successful. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of that. As Randall generously said, I do run samwalkerobxnews.com. Launched that in January. A few of you may already subscribe. If not, I have business cards, shameless plug, see me, and get you hooked up. But it's one of the things always when I came back from Campbell University in 1998, I wanted to work in the news, wanted to work in radio, work in TV, whatever, media, to inform our community. So that's what I do. So anyway, I have a unique perspective probably from you. Bob and I have worked together, media, that type thing, but at the same time, a little bit of a personal relationship because I know what he's gone through for 8 years. I know. I lived it. I was there when my mom was getting the phone calls all night, all day, at their business, at home, all that stuff. It couldn't go anywhere. So anyway, Bob, thank you for being a part of this. And you've got several things you want to go through. I've got a few questions. I know you all have a few questions. So Bob, go ahead.
All right. Well, I'm going to stand up if I don't mind so I can see people back here. Well, I guess you guys know I'm Bob. I've been down here. It's funny you reminded me of the Wellhead Club. My dad tried to buy that, and the county outbid us. Thank God. Thank God.
That's right, he did too.
I completely forgot about that. He was going to turn that into an inn after developing that at Corolla Light. For those of you who don't really know my story, I came down here for the first time when I was 14, had to go through the guardhouse, and we were looking up in Sandbridge. I'm from Richmond originally, and we got up here, and there was just a little tent out here where the fountain used to be, selling real estate, and I'm like, why are we here? This is not Virginia Beach. There's no girls here. This place is not where I want to be. Well, fast forward, getting to my mid-20s, and I land here anyway to get away from my ex-wife, but that's a completely other story. But yeah, I never forget moving down here. I bringing a truck down here, a rider truck, and I was 16, totally not legal to drive it. Popped in and drove it down here to bring furniture in. I think we were the third or fourth house in Corolla Light, right on Franklin Street. And there used to be a life-saving station across the street from us, and that was supposed to stay there, and ended up, of course, that land was more valuable than the building that was on it. So it went away, and it's up in the 4 Drive now. Another friend of mine actually owns that house now, so he's talking about restoring that. Or maybe bringing it back down here. It'd be cool if we brought it back down here. So I have a long-standing history here. My family bought the inn at Corolla Light, and at that time it was a Soundside swimming pool for the resort. There's a miniature golf course there for people who've been here long enough to remember that. The pavilion that there's a trolley stop over at the oceanfront was on that property originally. Dick came over and said, "Hey, you guys don't look like you're really using that. Can we have that back?" I said, "Sure, take it away." So it got moved around the resort a couple different times to land over there. But it has been an interesting ride for me the last 8 years. I've crammed a lot of education into my head that I didn't think I could get in there. Learning, as Sam said, North Carolina law is completely different. I grew up in a Commonwealth state. That means something completely different from a Dillon rule state. So Currituck County, just as a matter of local government, is a corporate body politic. We function as a corporation does with a board and a general manager, in this case a county manager. And we only have those powers that the state grants us, and they giveth and taketh at will. The system here, we're talking about grants. There's a grant application process. We don't qualify for anything. We're what's considered a Tier 1 county. We have the healthiest economy in the state of North Carolina. So because of Corolla Light and other owners down here, that has happened. At one point in time, I think about 80% of the county taxes came from the beach over here. They pretty much equalized now. About 50% of the tax value in Currituck County comes from Corolla, and then the mainland matches that. I just want to talk for a minute about a few things I've accomplished during my time that you may or may not even know or even have seen. And it's simple stuff behind the scenes that it was common sense to me. For instance, changing the sign. When I got elected, the sign down at the county line said, "Welcome to Currituck." Well, nobody knows where Currituck is. They're coming to Corolla. So I got them to change the sign. We've got over 150 trees planted along the greenway through here to brighten that up a little bit. We've extended the greenway. The next project list is actually getting the sidewalk fixed down by the bank and crossing over and going into where Food Lion's at through that whole area. The county has resisted that for years, knowing that the bridge would be here and they're going to widen the road. And I just said, well, the state will, if they tear it out, they'll repave it. They'll put it back in. So let's get it done. So that's happening. Speaking of paving, they're supposed to repave 12, hopefully this winter. It was actually supposed to happen in 2020. Everything stopped, and then they had to re-let the contracts because they expired. So we had to get back online again. There's only 2 people that can do the paving job here to DOT standards. So that should happen hopefully this winter. We won't have to drive around looking like we all live in New Jersey or Pennsylvania or someplace that has potholes. The Greenway, we're going to finish the last section of that down by section T and G. We just got a local eminent domain bill passed. One of the nice things in North Carolina is we can do these local bills. If it's under 15 counties, the governor doesn't have to sign them, so it doesn't have to go through partisan stuff. So we've got an eminent domain bill that was recently passed that gives us the authority, or more authority, to enter into eminent domain and use that as a tool. So we've had that property appraised, and now we just have to negotiate with James Johnson's attorney to buy. You know, it doesn't really matter because it appraised. If nothing else, the appraisal value will be accepted by the courts. So we're trying to get that cheaper if we can, but this James Johnson we won't. So we've got that finishing up. There's a walking plan for the village I've been trying to get done for the last 5 years. That hopefully will come to fruition in the next few years. It is in the project list now. We've acquired the easements we need to. So I'm trying to get a walkway moved over and get people off the road through the village so that the foot traffic through there can move through there much easier. Hopefully that will continue to go past my time as a commissioner here. Another big topic everybody's talking about, of course, in Corolla is beach stabilization. What's going on with that? We have hired an engineering firm. We finally did. We're on our 4th year of study to understand how the sand's migrating, moving, doing what it's doing. We went out to bid, and we now have, I believe we've signed a contract to get someone to come in and actually put that plan together for us. What does that look like? So we have to sit down with them and tell them what we want. There's a lot of moving parts to that. Anybody that's paid attention to Dare County and what they have done, depending on how much sand you put out there, if FEMA kicks in, if you lose it during the storm. So there's a lot of moving parts literally to the beach and how that works. So we have to be, very careful how we do that because it is very expensive, as everyone knows, to do that. So that is going through the motions right now, and that takes several years to do. So over the next several years, we have to get federal permits. We have to, get someone in, get bids, understand the price, what it's going to, and then we will have to create a tax district to deal with that. Occupancy tax. Sam and I were talking about that earlier. It is there for that use. Specifically, it is mentioned in our use of occupancy tax that it may be used for that purpose. We have, I think, about 25 million right now in occ tax that could go just to that. It's just sitting there. We have good reserves, okay? We've been saving our money in case we have a hurricane and we had a Katrina level event come through and we had to start over again. We actually have enough money to keep the tourism department alive and well and start moving people back here and let them know if we had to do a rebuild, for instance. So we've got all that in place, but it's not enough. I mean, you're talking several $1 million a mile of sand. So it's not going to be enough to pay for it, but it will be enough to put a big down payment on it and then help service the debt. So at some point we'll have to have a talk with you guys about a tax district here when we get to that point. And then we'll figure it out from there. Dare County has a good model to look at, and I assume that future boards will look at that model. and use that same model or something very close to it. One of the big problems I had was obviously Corolla was Currituck Outer Banks. No one knows where that is. They couldn't tell you what county this is when they come here as a tourist, but they know where Corolla is. So we engaged a consulting firm to come in and look at that and look at rebranding. We were talking about when Dick was on the tourism board, or Doug, excuse me, was on the tourism board, and have now done that. So we're looking at rebranding, owning kind of northern Outer Banks. That's what we are. We're the northern and the Outer Banks, but have that association with the Outer Banks, Outer Banks, Outer Banks. And the other side of it is looking at the mainland. We have a ton of tourism over there. It's not really, you don't really see it here, but we have it. And we're trying to grow that to have another base for tourism, to bring more occupancy tax in. So as we go through that process, we are rebranding or looking at the branding on the mainland. Right now it's Sportsman's Paradise. Does that fit anymore? That's the question. You know, but we have to ask that of the mainland really, because those are the people that are gonna, it's in their world. So we're looking at that and rebranding the mainland and making it match what is going on over there now, or what we may become or want to become, and then work towards that goal. And you know, farmers are dying off. They're not, the younger generation isn't farming anymore. And so that land's going to become available. We've got to have a plan for it. And as far as having a plan goes, we do, you know, everybody's been talking about the bridge for 30 years, maybe 40 years coming in here. But that is a reality now. I sit on a committee for transportation, and it's a reality. North Carolina Transport, we had it as a local item and moved it over to the Turnpike Authority for the state of North Carolina. It was originally in their budget. They had to deal with it because of the toll, and then they put it into a local funding pot, and it's basically all the money that we have available for projects regionally. So we have now moved that money back over to the Turnpike Authority to seek out the permits. There's only 2 federal permits we have left to get. There's also, I believe it's $380 million in a federal infrastructure bill that we can get a hold of. So we're applying for that grant, the state of North Carolina, as the Turnpike Authority specifically. And we are, according to the parameters, very well placed to get that money. So that gives us over 500, close to $600 million in total with the 280 we have set aside, we've had for years, decades at this point. And if we get that full pot, we will be able to move forward with a big chunk of the funding taking place on that bridge. That also will expedite the 2 last federal permits. They're due to expire, and they are expecting those permits to come in any month now. And so if that permit gets, like I said, if that funding comes through, those permits will get granted. Basically, they said you're good for the money, we got to give the permits to do it. So it may happen in my lifetime, it may not, but it is a very real reality now that it will most likely happen in the next 5 years. And it'll take, 5 to 6 years to build the thing once they start, something like that, the whole process anyway. They haven't designed it yet. They have to wait to figure out the funding, then they'll move into design, build, assigning the contract to a builder, bidding that out. So one of the other things we've got, this is Ben's fault. He called me about milfoil money. So I got $50,000 put in a grant for the local communities to use to get the milfoil up if we have a repeat of last year. So it was so bad it turned the copper black on the Whalehead Club. I guess y'all have seen that, but it was something. I've never seen that in my lifetime down here. So we now have money set aside for that. We still have, if you're an oceanfront owner, we have our sand fencing grant program. We'll pay for the sand fencing and dune grasses to be restored. Make sure we kept plenty of money in there. So any of y'all that want to take advantage of that, or in this case, maybe the resort does it as a whole. And,
We do.
So but we still have that available for you. Everybody's seen the new playground. That took me 7 years. I started on that before I became a commissioner, trying to beat it into them to get that done. New ABC store, started out under Ben as my manager and progressed to where it's at now. And I've received a few comments of why is the parking that way? Why is it situated that way? It makes no sense when you pull in there. And that's because it's a part of a larger picture. When the bridge gets built, we plan on moving our visitor center up near the bridge terminus, which will be by the new ABC store. And so that whole complex will change as we move through. We also have room on there. We were looking at maybe doing a dog park over there. We've heard some people want to have a dog park. Those are very popular now. I don't know if we have room for pickleball courts, but I was talking to my wife this afternoon about that. And it's like, we have all these parking lots over here in Whalehead that are half full. Maybe we should look at doing something in there. The county doesn't own a lot of land over here. It's very expensive real estate, obviously. So we don't own a lot of land that we can put those kind of things on, but we do own those parking lots. And like I said, they're not really used that much. So maybe we can look at doing something like that to make it a little bit better if you live here year round, something to do. We're working through in the moving of the old ABC store to the old ABC store spot. We're looking at maybe putting a medical building of some sort in there. Working with a nonprofit, Albemarle Regional Healthcare will come in and establish that for us and provide for that. We pay into them regionally, so they can come in and do that. We've also got a problem with opioid settlement money, dealing with the opioid problems. It's real. It's here in Corolla, so we're looking at doing mental health there as well for people. And we have Denise Corey did her epic adventure. Her son owns Outer Banks Crab Boil Company. So she's involved in that. So we're trying to bring all those pieces together. Now that we have this empty space sitting there, we could revamp that space and turn it into something. So that should hopefully happen in the next year or two. We just got to finish cleaning out that space. There's bottles of liquor everywhere and shelving there and get out of it now. Everything it didn't sell. What else have I missed out? WRC building, most of you guys know that we own that now. We took possession of that from the Wildlife Resources Commission. We're looking at how we can utilize that facility after hours for people so that we can hold these kind of meetings in there. There's an auditorium and a stage there. The problem is it wasn't designed to have people in it after hours, and there's a lot of valuable stuff in there. So we have to look at doing a little bit of a redesign internally and controlling movement basically so that after hours we can make it where you can come in and out, have a meeting there or do whatever, maybe get a community theater, who knows, I don't know if there's people here for that. So, but that space is now ours to utilize, so we're gonna work through that and revamping that. We also inherited the old pier that's fallen down back there. That thing's gonna be millions of dollars to rebuild, so I don't think we will rebuild that walkway out to the gazebo out there. It's just, I don't think it's money really well spent when we could be putting it into sidewalks, maybe beach nourishment, other projects here that make sense that will get much more used than a pier nobody went to. I think I've covered about everything. I know Sam's got some questions for me. So, yeah, I'll let you hit me up if you want to.
Yeah, all right. I will keep it brief. Explain, you talked briefly about how our local government is set up. Mm-hmm. From the bottom up, top down, but I think more importantly, in your term county commissioner now, you've had multiple county managers. We're just coming through the process with the last year of Ike McCree retiring, in the process now of hiring a new county manager. Explain what the county manager does, but at the same time, can you just kind of summarize what went on there so it's a little easier to understand some of the things that went on where we're at now?
Well, I know you know,
yeah,
because we well, that really Ike ended up retiring and leaving because of a commissioner doing something he shouldn't have done, and I'll leave it at that. So it kind of forced his hand. He didn't want to be here anymore after that went down. Now, if y'all have watched any of those meetings, we had to censure a commissioner over that, and that's not anything I ever want to do. But again, that was no kind of fun. At that point, I considered Paul actually to be my friend. He would come by and sit on my porch, and I had a house here in Whalehead, and we would drink rum and lament about life. So Ike decided it was better for him to retire and move on. He's actually working for the General Assembly now as an attorney. And Ike is hands down one of the better attorneys probably in the state of North Carolina, especially when it comes to local government, North Carolina law. The guy's just a walking treasure trove of information. So his services to Currituck County kept us out of a lot of lawsuits, or got us into lawsuits, but we won because he knew what he was doing. So through that process, we ended up with Rebecca Gay, who was his right hand, and she has stepped in as the interim county manager. North Carolina law requires that we have a county manager. So if she didn't do it, I would have got stuck with it, and that would have been good. I'm good. I'm okay at this, but that's a lot to do. The managers do everything. I mean, they are the chief budget officer for our county. We were in the middle of preparing a budget. when the findings came down from the Court of Appeals from the CCA lawsuit, and they said you can't use tax for this, 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 and this. Well, that's about $6 million roughly of funding that we use over here for police, fire, EMS. We are required to pay for police department and EMS. We are not required to have fire suppression, believe it or not. As odd as that notion is, we don't have to have that. We of course do have that, and you have a paid fire department here. So we had supplemented that fire department. You'll see in your tax bill that your fire tax went up here because of that. We had supplemented them. We were buying equipment for them, outfitting them, EMS, ambulances, sheriff's department vehicles, all that stuff was being paid for, or a big chunk of it was being paid for out of OC tax. And so that had to come from somewhere. So we had to delve into our general tax fund, and we ended up coming up a couple pennies on our regular tax rate, mostly to cover that. It had to come from somewhere. So that's essentially what happened there. So we're in the search right now, back to your question, about trying to find a new manager, and nobody wants that job anymore. So it's going to be interesting. We've had a application out for a month, or job opening posted for a month now. We've had 6 applicants, and no one of any real consequence to do that job as of now. So we'll let that go for probably another month to 6 weeks, give it 2.5 months to see if anybody else pops out of the woodwork. In the interim, Rebecca's doing an outstanding job actually as our interim county manager. When she said, I'll take the role, she said, I can keep us afloat. I can do that. Turns out she can do way more than that. She is outstanding. And so she has now figured out that she doesn't want to go back to being the assistant county manager, so she's put her name in the hat as well. So we'll see what happens. But she is outstanding. She really understands what it means to be a public servant and everything that comes with that. And it is ungodly hours, meetings after hours. Your phone rings at night, and you have to keep it on. If there's a fire, if there's a police chase, if there's this, there's that. There's a shootout last weekend at the Ponderosa. It's a lot. It's a lot that you're asking someone to do that job for. And at the time, 5 years ago, what, Ben, you were about $116,000, $118,000. You know, and that was a step up from the last guy. Mm-hmm. So you can't get anybody to work for that anymore. You know, I mean, it's just not going to happen. So the job actually pays pretty good now. So we were hopeful that we would be able to get somebody to come through.
You spoke about the budget process, which for the most part seemed to be going pretty well. And then right at the last minute, you had a situation. I'm a taxpayer in Corolla, just like the rest of
it
us.
affected everybody.
Yeah, with supplementing some teacher aide salaries that kind of stretched things out. But at the same time, the original budget proposal changed that included the fire service district tax changing here in Corolla. Explain the process, how that ended up being lower than it originally was.
Well, we just went back and crunched some more numbers. What ultimately worked out to, and you know, I do have a problem with it. Okay, I told Dan when we went to do this tax, the former county manager, Dan Scanlon, is this 4 cent going to work in perpetuity? Is it enough money? He said, yeah, it's enough money. I was like, how can that be? I mean, you're already seeing inflationary pressures. The economy was coming back around at that time. You know, things were a little bit on the uptick. So he said, yeah, no, that's good. And lo and behold, it wasn't even close to good enough to cover that. And so there was a mindset at a county staff level that Corolla should pay for that service. Well, then Knott's Island collapsed. Their fire service collapsed. Well, there's no tax base over there. A penny over there is $40,000, $50,000. It's nothing. So when we get the same tax rate for both districts, they're not covered either. They're nowhere near covering the $1 million+ it costs to run that fire service over there to have about 50% of the same staffing we have here. So I've always had a problem with it that Corolla was asked to pay more of their share when they're already paying. The tax base here creates a ton of wealth for the mainland, or not really wealth because we have a balanced budget, but it creates a lot of money. And there is built into the original tax bracket money for fire services. Years ago, it was broke out in the bill, and then we had people calling and go, well, I don't want to pay for the fire tax. I'm not going to pay that 4 cents. Or I don't want to pay for the schools. I don't want to pay that 6 cents. So we just combined it all and made it what you saw, 32 cent It was the original tax rate before we revaled. And then I bought a property up in New York to go skiing during the winter, and I got a tax bill from them. And I got rid of that property after I got that tax bill, but it had broken out in there what was going to the schools, what was going to the fire department, generally where your money's being spent. And I was like, this is a good idea. Why don't we do this here? So I brought that back here. So we started breaking that out again. And sure enough, the calls came in. Why am I paying for schools? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? Well, at the end of the day, Dan Scanlon used to say, there ain't nothing fair about taxes. And that is true. But the reality is, Sam and I were talking about this. Each generation pays for the one before and the one after. It's just the way it is. I've paid for kids to go to school here. My son didn't go to school here. We had him in a private school, but I'm still paying for those kids now. So it is what it is. We have a lot of people that are older now and on fixed incomes in the mainland that never made any money anyway, and these tax increases have really hurt them. And they want to, receive a tax break to not pay for kids to go to school. North Carolina doesn't actually allow us to do that. Like I said, we are a corporate body politic. We're basically a franchise of the state. We do what they tell us to do, and that's about all we can do. So we can't actually forgive that money. It's not something we can do.
That's a good point that North Carolina actually has in its constitution.
Yes.
Which the courts have upheld in the Leandro suit that must provide basic education. It's in the state constitution. That I think explains better how what you guys pay goes for my kids, myself, my kids, my grandkids to go to school in the mainland. The situation there. I just real brief. What happened there at that last meeting with the teacher aid funding? And that was something else. So Rebecca went back in, crunched some numbers, and able to find enough to make that up.
We had full fund balance on that one. So we had the schools post COVID when kids were being educated online, especially K-3. They weren't getting foundational learning, reading, writing, arithmetic. So they came to us and said, we need some teachers' aides. We need more teachers that are locally funded. So the state of North Carolina provides for a bronze level education. Unless you're going to higher education, then they're all in. But as far as foundational learning, bronze level, it's up to each locality to decide how much money they want to put in per pupil allocation and how well you want to fund that education. So we said, okay, we can, and they came up with 2.5 curriculum coaches to help new teachers and help anybody struggling design a curriculum to help catch these kids and bring them back up to speed. And we said, okay, we can fund that for a few years and see if it works. And if it does work, we'll continue to keep funding it. Well, we had funded 10 teachers' aides and 12 teacher positions, and then these 2.5 positions for these curriculum coaches. When we got to the budget this year, that was, it's real money. It's millions of dollars. It's a couple pennies of tax that we would have had to raise to pay for those. We didn't have it because we have a balanced budget. We didn't have that money. So we ended up deciding that we could probably come up with the money to take care of the teachers' aides. And at that meeting, if you watched it, every single person came up and spoke about how important the teachers' aides were. And that was the one thing that stuck with me through that. And I know from my own personal experience growing up going to school how invaluable teachers' aides can be in the classroom. So I went to the board and I said, listen, let's fund the teachers' aides. The other teachers are supposed to be covered in the funding formula. We have a per pupil allocation we do. So on average daily membership, we put out, I can't quote the exact amount right now, but that rolls into their funding formula every year. And as the student body grows, their funds grow with it. And we're able to capture that in a normal growth of our economy, generally speaking, without having to go after extra taxes. Well, we also had to build a new school, and that accounts for 8 cents of our tax increase. That went from, was that about 28 million, Ben, when you first started, to $60 million during COVID. That building tripled or doubled. So anyway, we had to deal with that. So we could only squeeze so much, juice out of that lemon, and we had to stop. So that's basically what happened. I called a couple school board members and said, listen, we can do the teacher aides, but we can't do these extra teachers. And that's a problem with the North Carolina form of government when they dictate what you have to do. The education department said, we're going to reduce classroom size down to 13 kids for K through 3. per teacher. Well, that's all well and good. That's great. That's more interaction, instead of having 26 kids or 30 kids in the classroom. But the problem is the schools didn't grow. You had to create more classrooms. You had to hire more teachers. And they didn't fund for any of that. So it fell on us locally to fund that. It's an unfunded mandate. So that was part of this whole 12 teacher thing. And now they're saying, well, the test scores are coming back and you're going to be blown away at how good they are, that we were successful in catching these kids and bringing them up to speed. So now the argument is going to be going forward whether or not we fund those things or not. Because if they can show the success, why wouldn't we? If we can put out a good product here, it only benefits the community, this county, and the workforce here that's available to, you guys basically to hire. So.
All right, open it up because you hit the beach nourishment, you hit the bridge kind of summary. I know probably you guys have got a lot of questions, so Go ahead, have at it.
Don't everybody jump at once.
I've got 3 questions.
Okay. Got 2 answers.
The beach, the sand, nourishment.
Mm-hmm.
I have only personally been in a friend's pickup up at Corolla, and I've been south from here about the food line. How is the beach from food line south to the county line?
It's actually in pretty good shape.
Is it similar to what we have, or does it vary all over the place?
It does vary. Interestingly enough, right where the southern access is, down by Currituck Club, it's really narrow right there, and then it widens back up again. And Pine Island actually paid for their own study to be done. And we added to that data. So we actually have 6 years of data, or 7 years of data for Pine Island. But it gets better as you go south, basically. And there's not as much movement in shifting sands. And I didn't say this earlier, but in our last report we got, they said that over the last 30 years, we have lost the equivalent to a tractor trailer load length of beach. The width of the beach has shrunk by the length of a tractor trailer. That's something everyone can envision.
So does that mean when there is re-nourishment, whenever, that there would be more built out at our end and less down south because they already have it still? That's a great question. That's why we had to hire an engineering firm to look at this, look at how the sand is moving. So one of the things, and I'm sure Sam's heard this, Paul Beaumont has talked about, one of the other commissioners, is that we're gaining sand. Okay, but that's a bit of a misnomer because it's underwater out at 19 feet. It's never coming back up. What has not happened is we haven't had a hurricane in a while. Knock wood. So not having a hurricane, that sand has remained basically stable while it's eroding onshore, the dry visible part of the beach that we all like. The part underneath at about 19, 20 feet of depth is what they call a depth of closure. And that's where the sand basically stops moving anymore. So that sand is sitting out there. And I asked the engineer point blank, is it ever coming back? He's like, no, it's never coming back. It's just that anecdotally, we don't know why it's sitting there. It should be gradually moving off. So if you go up to Villages of Ocean Hill, they're in really, really bad shape.
That's possible.
Oh man, that house we built up there, 1210 Atlantic, we used to have, the swimming pool's gone from that house. So I took the Board of Commissioners up in my tour truck and I said, we're going up the beach. Come on, y'all gonna actually see what this looks like because they don't go out there, they don't see it, they live on the mainland. And they were shocked at the level of erosion that's taking place. And my uncle built a house up there at the end of Atlantic Avenue, right at the northern end of Villages, or Ocean Hill. And it had a mega dune in front of it, a swimming pool in front of the house, mega dune out there, hot tub on top of the dune, and then staircase out. And all of that is gone, including the pool. And I mean, it's 100 feet from where the top of the dune was originally, or maybe 150 back to the house. So they lost all of that. So certain areas we're going to have to focus on first, and you feather the sand out. So when you fill in an area, you have to feather it out further north and further south to not create basically a ridge or a trough system to allow. There's a lot that goes on with it. How high they build the beach up to pull the sand back out so that it will normalize and stabilize. So a lot of people made comments over Duck, for instance, when they did that. They built this beach way up, and it was intentional. It was so the ocean could grab the sand and pull it back out and gradually do that, and that widens the beach in the process as it raises the level of sand under the water, basically, so you get a wider beach through that process. And if through FEMA, if you go, think it's 150 feet of mean high tide dry sand. If you have a hurricane and it wipes that out, they'll fund 80% of the rebuild. And hopefully that sticks around. We'll see, how those funds go. But anyway.
As part of that, FYI, Amy and Ben, I was standing in line with my granddaughters today at the tie-dye, and I happened to be talking to a family from Austin, Texas, who's been coming here most years, for 20 years, and they said, "Where's the sand?" Right now, if you go out here, you got all the umbrellas and all the beach chairs, there's no beach.
Mm-hmm.
So that's coming from a pain, guest.
Yeah.
Second question, you mentioned about extending the sidewalk from the bank, I guess, down to Buck Island?
Yeah, we'll come across the front of the bank, jump across the road, the crosswalk there, and then stay on the east side of 12 and bring it into the shopping center, to the old BB&A building.
Do we hope that will be done before next summer?
Yes, that's in this winter's project list. Yeah, that's on the project list.
Third question, I'm guessing some of y'all are on some of these social media groups about non-resident owners. And it's kind of hard to parse it because it's everybody from Salvo to Corolla. But the general discussion is the owners of houses that rent, like my family does, are not getting as many weeks. And if anything, is having to cut the rent a little bit to get people here. Does the county see any of that in your big picture and how it affects your budget that comes from our renters?
Yeah, absolutely. I been talking to enough people to know what was coming when we were going through the budget. At that time, Ike was working on the budget with Rebecca, and I said, "Listen, you guys need to really grossly underestimate what's going to come in." I'm on the ABC board. I chair that board too. That the sales were down there 10%, and we give over $1 million from the ABC to the county every year to go into the general fund to be used. So 10% is a real number, and when the penny of tax here is $800,000 and you lose $200,000 from the ABC board, you got to make it up somewhere. For those of you who don't know, North Carolina has a balanced budget. We have to balance the budget, and so does the state at a state level. So each county, each locality has to do the same thing. We can only tax for that which we plan to spend on. So we have been very conservative here and not just taxing to tax. If we don't have a need for it, we don't do that. Just like the fire departments, we didn't need that extra penny of tax. When we got down and really started finessing the numbers, we dropped the fire tax down another penny because we didn't need the money. So
the county is seeing lower revenues
oh yeah, we've accounted
this
for
year
it.
compared to last year because of fewer home rentals?
Not really. So
Because I realize it's also new houses.
right. Well, yeah. So we grow the economy a little bit. When I came into office, we were doing about $400,000 a year, kind of average growth. Now it was $1.2 million this year. So we have seen that. We can go into what's called key data and actually see generally what markets are doing as far as rentals go. So we can look at that forecast on advanced reservations. We actually were not down on occupancy tax numbers, which the state reports to us. But like I told Cameron, our tourism director, I said, I really don't care about the occupancy tax that's generated. I care about the number of people that are in the home. How many houses are booked and how many people are in it, because those are the people that are going to spend money here at our businesses and generate the sales tax revenue. And sales tax revenue is very important to us. We don't get 100% of our sales tax that we collect and remit to the state back. They distribute it around to other poorer counties. So we don't get the full complement back. So every penny counts, literally in that case.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering if there's an update on the problem that we've had on the sound side with the weeds and the terrible stench.
Yes.
It turned off.
Can I weigh in on that? It's all at my house in
Right.
Water Lily right now because all this
Right.
east
That
wind
way.
we've had.
Are you down at the ferry?
No, I'm actually directly due west. I'm due west at Water Lily, Church's Island. Yeah, it
Well, I
all
know
blew
it's
over
really
there.
bad close to Whalehead.
Yeah.
And
We're getting ready to dredge
and
that.
it turned. We have copper on the side of our house that turned it completely.
Oh, it was something.
And we
Yeah.
have grand piano, it turned the keys black inside our house.
Wow.
Wait, what is this that does that?
It's the grass basically built up and it was rotting and producing sulfur. And so when you went down the set, you could smell it anywhere in Corolla. The wind was going the right way. It was really, really bad. So Ben called me when we were going through the budget. You guys, if you don't know how lucky you are to have Ben, you're very lucky to have Ben. And shame on you for taking him from us. But yeah, right. Well, his knowledge of how North Carolina government works obviously is very deep. But not only that, his relationships that he built as, working with us as commissioners is invaluable to you guys to be able to reach out, pick up the phone, and know I'll answer, and for a little while longer anyway. But not only that, he knows, what to ask for, what local government can do. And, it didn't occur to me to come up with a grant for that. It occurred to him. So he called me and said, hey, can we get like 40 grand in the budget for picking up the mill full? It's like, I think we can do that. We can find 40 grand in octax to do that. It certainly does affect your rental or your home, right? So we put that in, and so that'll be available for use if and when it happens again. We're also getting ready to dredge out the Wellhead Club, that south channel there where it's piled up in there. So that's gonna go away hopefully here in the near future.
Yeah, that's something that Bobby was here when we were here last time.
Mm-hmm.
Bobby talked about you guys were going to meet with the Corps.
Mm-hmm.
What came out of that, and where do we stand with the Corps on getting the channel dredged? So those of us who live on the mainland can come over here on our boats and actually do some things that none people don't have an idea what's over here on a nightly basis. So.
Good point. So Bobby Hanig, if you guys have met him, I joined the commissioner board with him at the same time. He served 2 years as a commissioner and then decided he had to go play at a state level. So he took off, but he went and met with the Corps of Engineers, Wildlife Resource Commission, all these alphabet soup groups that won't let us dredge, and got them to come up here and actually see what's going on. And so they left us feeling very hopeful when they left that they would actually be able to give us some permits and reopen the Wellhead Club to dredge in there. And then it's funny, I was thinking about this. I was telling my wife how short-sighted we were and stupid. Right down here in Corolla Bay, we had an opportunity to buy that for a couple $1 million. We had designs were parked there, right where the bridge terminals would come in. And we said, no, we can't do that. We're not, we had plenty of money. We had a land bank to buy land with, so we had money to buy the property. And I think it was $3.5 million at the time. And like, no, we can't do that. That's a lot of money. And it was stupid and short-sighted because it would have taken all that land out. We could have put a boat basin in there. There's a pond back there. There's a lot back there that we would have benefited from as a community. And it's one of the things that I probably regret that I didn't get done and didn't have enough vision or foresight to push to get that done. And it would have changed. That would have been 50, 60 less houses, in Corolla. And I don't think we need any more houses in Corolla, but we've still got a few left with Section T and Section G. For those of you who don't know what that is, Ocean Sands down there is under an agreement, a court-ordered agreement, and they can have a 5-story hotel on Section T, and I believe a 3-story on Section G. And those are those 2 undeveloped tracts down there. We did, when we were doing an eminent domain to move the sidewalk through there, find a 10-foot easement, which doesn't affect anybody here, but it lets people come out of the Currituck Club and access across 12. The only problem is it's right where the S turn is, right when you come out of that turn to head north. It's going to be a target-rich environment as you come around there for people crossing the road. So we're looking at that, and also found out there's a World War II bunker there left over for trying to spot U-boats. So if we can find it, it would be really cool to excavate that and see if it's still there and actually turn it into a cool little tourist attraction. But that's another area we're looking at. Can we get less people moving across right there at that southern beach access, which is way overcrowded because that's the only place for people from the Currituck Club to go to the beach. That was never intended as an oceanfront resort, and it ended up that way.
So back to the dredging thing, just to summarize that.
Yeah.
Where are we? So you're saying the dredging could happen?
Yeah, it's in governmental limbo at the moment.
Okay.
So I'll have to re-engage Bobby on it basically and get him to make a call and say, hey, where we're at. If we can gently nudge them along, and the guy that was a problem retired. And so he's gone. We've got new fresh blood in there and a little bit of a lightening on some of that stuff.
Right?
Yeah, at the court. So
Somebody, were you? Yep.
In conjunction with the dredging, what is the plan for fueling event of the boats at this end?
there probably wouldn't be. I mean, yeah, we don't need that. Fill it up at the house. You can't make it back across. Sorry about your luck.
We all know when we go out there, we better take a couple extra
Yeah,
cans.
yeah.
There ain't much on the other side
You
either.
can
So.
have a service
Yeah.
to get you back.
Right. Well, and it's funny though. They, we tried to do that People Ferry. What was that? God, 2000,
2000,
something
yeah.
like that. And that's when they dredged it illegally and got us in all the trouble. And it wasn't us. It was Bass Night that did it. Mark Bass Night's like, go dredge that damn channel, and they did, and then they had to fill it back in. So that's what got this whole problem. The impatience to go in and get the permits, which would have happened a lot easier back then.
Let me raise the issue about insurance. Oops, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I'll catch her next.
Let me raise the issue about insurance.
Okay.
One of the major costs for all of us is whether it's homeowners or dwelling policies or commercial policies. And the solution is for the state insurance department to allow the insurers to raise their rates. They apply for 50% increases and the commissioner negotiates down. And so next year, I guess we're saved because we're only going to get an 8%.
Right.
That's
But they-
average for the state, we're higher.
Oh, I
yeah.
understand all that, but all I'm saying
We
is
get the least amount of damage. That's amazing.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yep.
right. The problem is there's no incentive and no recognition of what we've done. Corolla Light put in fire hydrants and put in the facilities to fight fires more efficiently. Many of us have put in fortified roofs. Many of us have done other things to reduce losses that actually are the things we should be doing as homeowners. But the state doesn't seem to understand that they can work with us and with the insurance industry. The New York Times did a study and said that the property insurance business in North Carolina has been profitable for 12 of the last 13 years. And yet the insurance companies come back to us and to the commissioner and say, we need a 50% increase. There's no loss data that suggests that.
Right.
I know it's beyond the county's capability, but can you as the county help us go to Mike Causium, to help us go to the department and sort of say, let's get together to reduce losses, because if you reduce losses, then you're going to be able to have more affordable insurance and more competitiveness in the marketplace.
So we can do some of that. Doug, you look like you're chomping at the bit to talk about this. You know something
Well,
about it.
your local and state realtor community is very, very involved in this insurance problem. We work with the. You ever been to an insurance commissioner meeting? It's absurd. You're in the room and they're talking. You're not allowed to talk at all. You can't make a comment. You can't make nothing. And so he's not out to look out for you, the consumer. I hate to say it. He's out to look for the insurance companies, and he wants them to stay in business here. But Will Kelly, the CEO of our local realtor here, she's the most knowledgeable person on the insurance problems in the entire state. And she does a very, very incredible job of informing the NC Realtors and their lobbying group, and is solely responsible for this negotiation to get it down. But still, it's absurd. The western part of the state has 2 to 3 times the claims that eastern part of the state does.
On named storms.
That's over time. And they play with the way they measure it. They're picking years that have had high losses, and they don't count the 10-year span where they had nothing. And so it's a problem, but their realtor group is working on it.
Yeah, they are. When she came to speak to us, Willow did. She's a great advocate, certainly for your industry. And so I know Bobby said that's one of the things. In a long session, they're in a short session from North Carolina General Assembly, and when they go into a long session next year, he was talking about insurance being
Short.
Yeah, short. Meaning they don't do a whole lot; they talk a lot. But anyway, so that is a topic that the state is recognized as an issue. at the legislature level. So the General Assembly is going to look at that next year. Supposedly, that's one of their big things to tackle, because the other problem is we don't spread out any of that. You can only work within our borders in North Carolina. So auto insurance is the same way. Health insurance, there's only 2 or 3 companies that actually operate in the state of North Carolina for health insurance. And so the whole thing is screwed up, completely screwed up. And special interest has gotten just completely out of hand with the lobbying, even down to the Court of Appeals. Those judges are elected, and they will bend over and make rulings, not on law, but based on getting reelected. That's a very sad thing. They shouldn't be able to be talking. Yeah,
Enormous.
it's enormous. I mean, we finally hired our own lobbying firm to help us out. We had a couple guys, good old boy from middle of nowhere, and coming, well, boy, the long and the shorts of it is we got to go do this and go do that. And I mean, he was about as southern as you could get, from Oriental, and so we hired a really good lobbying firm. And they helped us out a lot. I mean, we got $11 million, $16 million to go towards our sewer and water infrastructure on the mainland, which we wouldn't have qualified for because of our tier status. We can't get grant money. So Bobby actually was able to put $16 million into a direct fund from the state, an appropriation to this county. We're not, because we can't get anything for like schools or anything like that. The Camden got $80 million for a school. So there's stuff like that really hurts us, and we end up going it alone, and it ends up hurting everyone in this room because the book gets passed down to you ultimately. All right.
It's a little question. I might have missed your answer, but is there a timeline for the sidewalk in the village?
No. I've been working on that for 5 years now, and I'm trying to get it in the lineup before I leave so that it's a project that we've gone through, I believe, and acquired all the easements we need to do that. And then now we just got to go through and design the thing. And so that's one of the things I'm going to try and get done before I leave, is to get that as a project to finish. And then it will, it'll keep going past my tenure here as commissioner.
So it's on the drawing board.
Yes, it's definitely well on the radar. Yes, sir.
With respect to that, crosswalks, there is lack of attention. A lot of people will come here, so you can be standing at the crosswalks. Some may have flashing lights, some do not. But there's a real safety issue, and particularly when it's foggy or in the evening, when it's hazy out, you cannot see, and therefore people will either ignore or they just don't see you. And this includes the local sheriff's department. You're standing there and those cars are just going by.
Yeah.
And they're going by. I know NCDOT did a study on Hawk and rapid flashing beacon systems. Those are 80 to around 120,000 each crossing. However, I did some research on some solutions that are push button flashing red lights on either side with radio communication between the two. So
Yeah.
you push one, it's about $5,000 to buy and install on each crossing. But like you said, at Pine Island where that curve is,
Yeah.
unless there is something there, we're going to have, the accidents are just waiting to happen. So is there any thought on that? And then the other thing too is there with the high density, not part of Corolla Light at Brindley, on the other side of Brindley Beach, and then over here at the Lighthouse Drive. And Shad is a terminus for 3 major roads, and a lot of people are coming up out there. I understand that Corolla Light Resort is responsible for putting in and maintaining its own sidewalks, but there is heavy use, and you're talking about putting sidewalks in Corolla Light. Is there any way that there could be a cost sharing on widening and maintaining the sidewalks that are maintained by Corolla Light Resort right now?
So on the sidewalks, I don't see why there couldn't be. There's the other side is how many trees do you want to lose and how much electrical do you want to lose? Because to put those sidewalks in, we're tearing out all that stuff. Corolla Light used to have a hell of a sprinkler system until they decided to put the bicycle lane in beside the highway and wipe that out. So So yes, there can be. We talked to Monterey about theirs. They wanted us to completely replace it. Us, the county, to replace it. And I said, well, you guys haven't put a dime into it. You know, you got to have some skin in the game too. The reason I'm looking at Corolla at the village is because there's just too many people walking. That little road up there is terrible. So the other thing we've looked at doing is making that road one way and putting a pedestrian lane in, 30%, 40% of the road surface, turn that into a pedestrian lane, which is, kind of option B. It'll just be a mess trying to get in and out of the lighthouse if you have that going one way or the wrong way or whatever. So the short answer is yes, there can be certainly a cost sharing to look at expanding sidewalks or replacing it, but you will have a mess there. And then the lights and stuff, that's probably, I'd have to see if that's a DOT or a county function. I really don't know about crosswalk lights and stuff. Some of it, like what they have in Southern Shores, for instance, that's a town. They have different stuff they can do than counties can. We're forbidden from messing with ditches and roads. And so some of the crosswalks we put in, like the Red Brick Road one down by Food Line, we actually put that in and maintain that. But I'm not sure about power, lighting up the stuff and flashing
Well,
lights
the
and
good
stuff.
thing is, I think Corolla Light put up pedestrian
Right.
signs.
Right,
So it's $5,000 solar powered.
right.
Push button, have a lifespan of 7 years, so you could, for the price of one going in normally with powered and all the other stuff, we could have 5 locations, we could put in all 5, and even if we replace it every 7 years, it would take us 30 years to run up 100.
Yeah, I don't see why it would be a bad thing.
Sounds like another grant program.
What's that?
Sounds like another grant.
Sounds like another grant program. There you go.
Does Outer Banks Pedestrian the Bicycle and Pedestrian Safety Coalition, have we partnered with them here in Currituck? I don't think we have we? I didn't think so. Yeah.
No.
Because that's a whole, there's that,
Yeah.
their efforts, which pulls the multimodal
Yeah.
money from
Yes.
DOT
Yes.
as well.
Yeah,
so.
and there's some money. There's money in the local. It's probably. I have to go back and look, but I want to say there's maybe $15,000 or $20,000 right now that's available.
Multimodal.
Yeah, just regional pot of money.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I wear a lot of hats in Corolla. Right now, I got my mom hat on. So
Okay.
I am super stoked to hear you say that you're actually gonna put sidewalks in the village. So we walk to school every day.
Yeah.
And it's tricky.
Yeah.
So it's really tricky right now. Even though school's out, but season
Right.
comes in. So I would really like to kind of understand your vision of where these sidewalks are going in conjunction with the new school. And how that's gonna help the infrastructure of the village.
Okay.
In addition, I'd also like to, you talk about sidewalks. I think it's great that you're extending it, to the food line all the way, from the bank to or the insurance company to the Albacore. That's great for pedestrian runners, dog walkers, everybody, and I'm very happy to hear about that too. But, to kind of work on, Oscar's crosswalks, there's 26 crosswalks from from the sand to the end of the county line. I would really like to know how we, as individuals, can work with NCDOT to ensure if they're doing repaving this summer or this winter, how can we maybe influence them to make better crosswalks? There are so many crosswalks that you don't even know that they're there. So I know they can do it. So,
Oh, absolutely, they can.
I mean, they made a no passing lane, from Shad Street to Austin Street, which was great. It took a couple of years, but that's fine. I know they can do it. I want to be a positive influence and kind of work with them.
Well, they'll come here and
get
meet
a
you.
bunch of the other parents to kind of help out as well.
Okay.
So,
The DOT will actually come up here. You can invite them to come and sit down with you in this room. Corolla Civic Association did that, and they showed up for a meeting with them and talked about the repaving and what's going on with that and restriping. We got them to restripe the road before they could repave because everybody almost got hit going into Harris Teeter where everybody jumped in the right lane. Got that finally fixed. So you can influence that. It's literally just reaching out to the local district and inviting them to come over here. Ben knows how to get a hold of him, by the way. If I haven't mentioned, he's a good resource. But they'll come and sit down with you and have a conversation. They're very amenable to that, and bringing up things like the crosswalk lights and flashing lights and stuff like that. can all be factored in. They have enough money in their budget. They can say they don't have money, but that's a lie. They can find that kind of money in a drawer. It's not that big a deal for them. So that's an easy thing. And they have to, if they tear it out, they have to put it back. So when they repave, they will freshen up all of the crosswalks and put that reflective, they put glass down on it basically to make it reflective and all that stuff. So yeah, they're easy to get to. As far as the village goes, what we had looked at was the west side of the road coming out of Whalehead. So you got plenty of swamp there where the old boat museum used to be. We could do a raised platform through that and open that up and get people on the left side of the road, come down to Hadley's building basically, cross the front of that, and then take a right at the intersection and jump back over to where the barbecue joint is. So, we would have to put a crosswalk in front of the new school and put another crosswalk in at that intersection where the barbecue joint is, and move. So it would be jumping across the road a little bit because the family that owns the house down there, it used to be Scarborough House, they don't want it coming in front of their house. So we have to literally jump across the road, which is fine because we can also carry that down in front of the barbecue joint and the life-saving station and bring it up by the library. So you can cross the road there, right? So we can get the kids off of that road as well. So I too dealt with it. My son went to village school for several years, so we had them traipsing up and down the road, going to the park to use the soccer goals or whatever else they were doing out there. So it has always been something I've been working on and trying to get it done and trying to get everybody to understand how important it is.
That's wonderful. I also want to say too, I want to give kudos to the sheriff's department. I see them out there every morning and every evening before and after school, making sure that the kids are safe and that those who do drive are okay.
So some of your tax money is going to the kids because that pays for the school.
Last one.
I just want to follow up on this discussion, which is having you here has been wonderful. We've been able to hear what it's like, to be making decisions that are really important to our future here as a community. And we need to do more of this with you while you're still in office and with your successor. Tell us about some of the discussions that go on within the commissioners about how would you like to deal with these crazy people over in Corolla that basically want you to come over and visit with us, and we realize that that's a major time commitment. There's also a huge time commitment for those of us who live here to try to come over for your meetings over in the county seat. So the question is, are there opportunities that we should be looking at to have a voice for Corolla, interact more effectively with the Currituck County government and our elected officials?
Well, we're still, at the end of the day, we all like to get elected and FaceTime matters, right? I mean, that's really what it's about. So if you guys can organize something and invite the board over or several board members over for just what we're doing here, roundtable discussion, they'll show up, and that goes back to using like the WRC building where if you can get 75, 100 people to show up, they'll show up for that. I mean, the voting block here is not insignificant. Corolla voted out Paul O'Neill years ago because of something he said, and he was gone. And it was enough votes to swing, so it matters as far as the voting goes here. People think everybody gets elected by the mainland, and that is true. There's a larger voting base over there, but 2 or 3 votes can swing an election in this county. And you get 400, 500 people over here that don't want you, they can get rid of you. So it's easy enough to invite us over here. At the end of the day, especially if you can get whoever's chairing the Board of Commissioners to come over. I think probably you'll see Paul O'Neill come back in. He'll probably be the chairman, realistically, and then Selena Jarvis, my current vice chair, will remain vice chair. I know she comes over here and will come over here if you ask her to. She's happy to do that. So most of them are happy to do that. They really are. It's just having a forum in which to engage them, and it's probably easier if it's just 2 of them or 3 of them. If you get more than 4, we have to announce it that we're going and advertise it because there's enough of us together that it could be considered a meeting. So we have to be careful of that. Yes, sir.
Is there an issue with having semi-annual board meetings here?
Yes and no. We talked about that. We actually looked at doing that years ago. We had a retreat down at the Hampton Inn. My first go round. My first year, we did that, and then now we've gotten to the point where technology is the problem. We want to be able to we got to have the technology to be able to have a meeting, live stream it, get it out there so people can see it, and have a forum where we can have public comment and get them in here. So it does actually open the door having the Wildlife Resource Commission building, and we have talked about that. And it really should matter if we have something that's Corolla specific. If we can come over here, you know, for a special use permit for a bigger project, for instance, that would allow you to engage us or talk to us or come in and speak your piece, whatever. And that's something else. You know, a lot of people don't understand when we do special use permits, you have to have lawyers, you have to have people with standing. It's not just about we want the project or don't want the project. We have to sit impartially as a judge panel basically and have evidence presented to us with expert testimony. And so those are things that, you know, we've got a suit right now in Whalehead because of this Saga project over here. After the fact, people came in and said, well, we don't like that. And we weren't told. Well, you were told. They just didn't bother to pay attention. And then after the fact, they paid attention. And now they want to get involved in a lawsuit and sue the county and Saga, but they don't have standing. They never gave themselves standing to be part of that procedure. So we do a Citizens Academy every year, and anybody that really wants to, that lives here now and has the time to do it, it's done over several weeks and probably 6 or 8 weeks. And you come in and you meet with different department heads and actually learn how North Carolina government works. That was something Ben and I were sitting around with nothing better to do in COVID talking about. I said, man, we need a way to do this. He said, Citizens Academy. I was like, that's exactly what we need. So another legacy from Ben. It has been instrumental in having people come in and understand how we work, and then be an advocate in the community to come out and say, no, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this. So anybody that's interested in that and living here now, keep an eye on the county website. We open that registration up. We'll have 40, 50, 60 people come through and do that. And the county manager will come in. Initially, I came to speak at several of those to address the group, and then, you know, they work through the different departments to understand how the government works here and how you can affect change here. So,
One more. We're here much longer than we had planned. So,
Yep.
One more question. Anybody else?
Everybody else?
If nobody's gonna take it, I'm gonna make one comment.
Fire away.
The folks in Corolla, and I mean this from the heart, don't know how lucky they've been for the last 8 years to have Bob and He's engaged, he's thoughtful, he's willing to hear both sides of any argument. I've worked around a lot of elected officials, and Bob, if he's not the best, he's one of the best.
Thank
and
you.
it's the honest truth. So we will miss you.
I'm not gonna miss you. I'm not gonna lie. So one of the things I decided not to run. My kid's going to college. My wife and I are going to be empty nesters, and it is you know, people understand that there's a lot to this job, and I make people mad, I make people happy. You get 50% shot at doing one or the other. But every other Monday, I have to be somewhere. I have multiple committees that I sit on. I'm on the Corolla Wild Horse Fund. I'm on the ABC board. I'm on the Albemarle Regional Planning Organization, which is the road stuff, and tourism. And so I have meetings for all of those things, and then there's all the work sessions we do, and then these things like this. And it has been rewarding in many ways, and I've enjoyed it. But now we're just, my wife and I are like, well, where are we going next? So the kid's going off to JMU, and we're going to go, she's already planned her trip to France for 2 weeks. She's out. So I get to watch the cat for 2 weeks.
The other thing I want to say is I would encourage any Corolla Light owner, the key to engaging with your local elected officials, you can invite them over and they will come. If you treat them with, even if you disagree, if you treat them with respect and civility, which in the world we live in doesn't happen as much as it should, they will come back the next time and they will listen. And I think that that's something that Corolla Light has always done a really good job of being positive anytime that they've interacted with the county. So I encourage each of you as owners, if you ever do have those conversations with your elected officials, always try to find those positives and think of the things to be grateful for too. And y'all do that, so I appreciate that. It makes my job a lot easier.
So it's funny you bring that up. So Don Cheek, of course, was here forever. And when I moved down here in 1996, that's when I met Don. And if he wasn't smoking a cigar, he was spitting it on me when he was talking to me. And I was telling my wife, I said, you know, every time I saw that guy, he was retiring that year, and somehow he made it to whatever. But the one thing he had that Ben has, he worked in local government. He was a town mayor, right? Mayor. Yeah.
Manager. He was a manager.
And he had a great relationship with the commissioners. He understood politics and understand having those relationships. So again, you got a good resource in Ben. As long as he's around, use him. Yeah. So thank you all for inviting me.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, for being here. I think it's really kind of appropriate that, you know, we're here in the Brindley building, and Dick Brindley's developed a great relationship with Currituck County, doing something new and exciting. We're doing something exciting here. We're continuing every year, and it's just so appropriate. Thank you so much. I would say that, you know, the chairman has announced that he's thinking about having a town hall in October, and I think all of us want to say that if you do that, we're going to be there and
Okay.
make sure that we get a good attendance.
That's because you were trying to drag me out. I should be at my pool right now. You realize that?
Thank you again.
Thank you.